And rather than give you bios of the panelists, I'm going to tell you a little theme about why they're all sitting up here. They all are leaders in the industry, and they have diverse experience within the industry. They have led safety organizations, environmental groups, they have led operations, and have also overseen site expansions. So as I tell you a little bit about each one of them, I will try to highlight that that is indeed their experience and their reason for being up here to talk with us this morning. So we have from Lyondell, and I'm going to ask you to raise your hand as I call off your name, Dale Friedrichs. Dale, who is a site manager at the LaPorte plant, is a graduate of Texas A&M University. Thank you. His degree is in, two degrees. It's ocean engineering and civil engineering. And Dale started his career as a project engineer at the Newport News shipbuilding. He has 30 years experience in our industry in safety, environmental, maintenance, and production. And Dale has been the site manager at 4 different Lyondell Basell facilities. Next, we have from Kuraray, Robert Armstrong. Robert is general manager of Kuraray's American EVAL business unit and was previously plant manager of the EVAL site in Pasadena. And I'm using some acronyms. I'm going to have the plant managers, the managers, tell us a little bit about what their sites do, so you'll have better knowledge after you hear from them. Robert has extensive experience in new process, product technology, application development, and manufacturing. During his 25-year career, Robert's worked in several countries, New Zealand, Japan, and obviously America. Robert credits his assignment in Japan with understanding the incredible detail for project management and scheduling. And he also said it also brought home to him how everything, including our plants, are bigger in Texas. Robert has a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from the University of Houston. And I'll just point out for the audience, the highest ranked college football program in the state of Texas. From INEOS, Olefins and Polymers USA is Dave King. Dave? Dave has experience working manufacturing, engineering, technology, and management roles. He also has overseas experience. He's been the COO and president of INEOS New Planet Bioenergy, where he oversaw construction and operation of an ethanol from waste facility in Florida. Dave credits his time with the Florida project for giving him a preview of the industry workforce challenge that we're all experiencing here, and it also has kind of fired up his passion for the job that he's in today as Strategic Workforce Development Manager, where he can help attract, train, and develop future employees. I'll also mention that Dave is a chemical engineering graduate from Queens University. Dave, that is New York City, Queens, right? No? Oh, it's in Kingston, okay. I was trying to equate him with some of those New York City graduates, but thanks, Dave, for that clarification. So what I will do, I'll tee up a few questions, and we have solicited questions from audience members in advance, but we also are asking you have white cards on your table. If you have questions that you want to, please write your question on the card, hold your card up in the audience. Somebody will circulate and pick those up and bring it up to us. But I'm going to start off with just a few questions to get them started until your questions come in. So Dale, I'm going to start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about Lyondell Basell Industries, particularly the LaPorte site? And this could be information about number of employees, projects that you have going, but also the products that you make and the eventual end-use products.
Okay, be glad to. Lyondell Basell is one of the largest petrochemical and refining industry companies in the industry. We have about 13,000 employees and roughly about the same number of contractors across our facilities. And we operate 57 manufacturing locations in 18 different countries. So a very diverse company, and we really have a very diverse portfolio of products. We're actually the #1 producer of polypropylene plastics in the world. We're also the #1 producer of oxyfuels, which is an additive in the gasoline pool. We're second in propylene oxide and an industry leader in olefins and polyethylene, much of which is on the Gulf Coast and here in Houston. When you look at our company strategy and vision, it's pretty straightforward. You know, we want to be the best operated and most valued company in our industry today and tomorrow. So how do we approach that? Again, pretty straightforward. We operate what we have today very well. And we do that by focusing primarily on the safety, ensuring that our employees and anyone who enters our gates goes home in a safe way. Environmentally responsible and very reliable operations to ensure our supply to our customers. And we have a strategy also to make sure we maintain financial discipline. You know, many of you know we went through bankruptcy back in 2009, and it kind of changes your DNA as a company. Financial discipline is how we do business, regardless of the cycle. And so as the cycle did turn down a little bit over the last couple of years, while others may have been laying off, we were actually out hiring because we focused on that cost discipline through the good times as well. So very proud of that in terms of working for a company that focuses on the future. The other thing is we're looking at growth. And we've done a lot of things already, primarily focused on debottleneck opportunities that we've had in our existing assets. And now we're kind of shifting gears and looking at larger brownfield projects, and there's been a couple of those announced recently. I also want to say, you know, none of this happens without great people, and that's a key cornerstone of our whole strategy is hire the best, hire very talented people, treat them well, create an environment where they want to come to work, and it just becomes a fun place to work, and we have success. The other thing I'll comment on is from a company strategy, giving back is very important. You know, the company and the employees in the company give millions of dollars and thousands of hours of their time back to our communities. I'll just share a good example here at LaPorte. We got word that there was a disabled citizen that really liked being outside but didn't have the capability to do that because their home wasn't structured in that way. So we're in the process of building them a wheelchair accessible deck, so covered deck that they can go outside each day and enjoy the outdoors. So that's just a small example of the types of things that we look for and try to give back. I'll kind of end it, I guess, saying that I'm very proud to work for this company. One is, you know, it's a true safety culture in the company. It's not just words on a page or on an internet site. It's a value that we strive for every day. The other thing is, you know, we've got a very bright economic outlook, tremendous career opportunity for everyone, and just a positive work environment that's fun to come to work each day. I've been with the company 21 years now, and hopefully I'll be allowed to retire from here. Thanks.
Thanks, Dale. Dave, I'll go ahead and ask you a similar question. You know, tell us a little bit about INEOS. But also, if you feel it would be helpful, maybe you can share a little more about your critical role right now in strategic workforce development.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So INEOS is the world's largest, third, fourth largest chemical company. And sometimes inside the house we say it's the largest chemical company most people have never heard of. We're probably $40 to $50 billion a year, depending on the vagaries of the commodity market. We're based in Switzerland. Very similar to what Dale was saying in terms of global presence. We're in 16 countries. We've got 15 business divisions, and we have roughly 17,000 employees worldwide. The things that we make are things that you encounter every day, everything from refined fuels to plastics to specialty chemicals. And more closer to home, I think, we have a major facility out here in La Porte, which is a polymers facility, another in Alvin, which is an olefins and polymers facility. We have a oligomers plant out here in La Porte. We have a styrolutions plant, which is the world's largest styrenic supplier. That's over in Bayport and another facility in Texas City, as well as a facility that makes nitriles down in Green Lake. And on top of that, an artifact of being one of the larger chemical companies is, in fact, we are the largest licensor of chemical technology. So we actually have a division called INEOS Enterprises, and they license technologies, and we have 3 of those divisions for nitriles, polymers, and our oligomers facilities here in Texas as well. Our strategy is really focused on safe and environmental performance, on efficiencies, and growth through merger and acquisition. And we've had a lot of that recently. That's probably where you would see our name pop up the most if you did a Google search in terms of the opportunities that we've been looking at worldwide in order to capitalize on the various opportunities that the manufacturing renaissance due to shale gas has brought to our door. And on top of that, I would say that we have a real strong focus on community engagement, and I guess that's a nice segue into the role that I have. I had seen in Florida, which is definitely not the hotbed of the chemical industry, very little infrastructure, no great community college programs set up to introduce craft or operators into the environment, and it was a lot of hard work, and unfortunately seeing the writing on the wall in terms of the amount of retirements and expansions that we have here in our area, despite the fact that we have an incredible infrastructure, logistics and pipeline and power, everything like that, the one opportunity that I think we're really going to have, the challenge that we'll all face, is around workforce development. So my passion around this, and as I said to Dennis, it may come from being 7 years as an ice hockey coach at Clear Lake, but my passion is really to help develop the youth, to get them into these great careers that we have, make them aware of them, certainly, and make sure that they understand the role that they can play in the careers that they can have, not just jobs, but great careers that they can have in our industry as well.
Dave, thank you. Robert, I'll turn to you and ask a similar question, but one of the questions, since I use the term EVAL, maybe you can certainly explain to us what that stands for.
Definitely can do that. So good morning, everyone. My story is very simple. I'm a guy from New Zealand. I like to say I'm from the deep south. I married a beautiful girl from Wisconsin. I work for a Japanese company in Houston, Texas. It's a small, small world. So I work for Kuraray. Kuraray's been doing business this year for 90 years, and we've actually been doing business here in Houston for 30 years. It was back in 1986 that Kuraray decided to invest in their first manufacturing facility outside of Japan when they built 2 production lines to make EVAL, EVOH. So EVOH is short for ethylene vinyl alcohol. It's a barrier polymer that's used in a lot of different applications, everything from food packaging to automotive fuel tanks to containers for agricultural chemicals. It's a very, very valuable material in that it has fantastic barrier properties to gases and hydrocarbons. But it's complementary to a lot of the products that are made by INEOS and Lyondell Basell, and that typically it's used as an individual layer in the package that is containing food or gasoline or agricultural chemicals. That's just one of the products that Kuraray makes, and so for 30 years we've been making EVOH here. In 2002 we started to make some specialty thermoplastic elastomers, and then 3 years ago we made some significant investments in Houston. We purchased some of the assets that DuPont was operating in La Porte, so we now make vinyl acetate monomer and PVOH, and we use vinyl acetate monomer as one of our raw materials to make EVOH. So 3 years ago we were making 2 products here. We now make a number of products, and in addition to the acquisition of the DuPont facility, we built a new PVOH plant on Bay Area Boulevard. So we've become a little bit more visible to people in the community and in the greater Houston area because of those investments. The reason that we do that is really the same as it was 30 years ago. It's the network of people and infrastructure and resources available to us here in Houston that supports being able to supply our customers in the Americas. Our products are sold everywhere from Canada down to Chile, and about 40% of what we make is exported overseas. So again, it's the infrastructure and the resources here in Houston that's the reason that we're here to begin with.
Sure.
I did want to touch on some of the other products that we produce and sell. The PVOH film that we make is produced by a company called Monosol up in Indiana. That goes into all the water-soluble dishwashing and laundry detergent pods that you buy at the supermarket. We make PVOH film in Japan that goes into all the big screen TVs that people buy for the football season. And as I mentioned, EVOH goes into gas tanks. So if you wash dishes, if you drove a car, and if you bought a TV in the last year or two, thank you very much for the business.
Robert, while you still have the microphone, go ahead and keep it there. Let me ask you, you mentioned assets. Obviously, you purchased some assets, but you are right now starting one of the assets up. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We've got a PVOH plant on Bay Area Boulevard, 40,000 tons of capacity over 2 lines. That plant is starting up at this point, and we expect to probably fill it out within the next year or two.
Okay, and I know what the people in the audience really want to hear about. I think there's a rumor that y'all are looking at another expansion. Is it going to be here local?
Yes, it will. It's more than a rumor. We're going to expand the EVAL site. So we're going to debottleneck our biggest production line, and that'll be an extra 11,000 tons of capacity. These are all fairly small numbers if you're used to talking polyolefins, but in our world, that's a very significant expansion. We're actively talking about when we need to build again on a global basis, and my job is to represent the interests of Houston and make the case that we should build again here.
All right, let me do one more follow-up to that. You mentioned some of the end-use products. What's actually driving the demand for the ethyl vinyl alcohol copolymers?
It's a combination of the rising cost of energy and food products and how valuable food is, and the convenience and value in flexible packaging. When you look at products that used to be sold to you in metal and foil and glass, plastic packaging is ultimately cheaper and helps protect the product for a longer period of time. I think that here in the States, you know, we waste probably about 25 or 30% of our food. It spoils before we actually use it, and that spoilage occurs in the refrigerator. In developing countries like Kenya, they spoil their food before they can even get it to the consumer. So something like 80 to 90% of the milk that's produced in Kenya never reaches a consumer because it spoils before they can receive it. So barrier packaging can protect and preserve more food, and that's the reason that's driving the growth here and also in Latin America. Beyond that, it's environmental regulation, protecting air, soil, and water quality by using barrier materials to prevent emissions of hydrocarbons, contain leachate in landfills. All of those applications are driving the growth for EVOH.
Thank you. Dale, you also mentioned products, new projects. And I think there's been an announcement, or maybe it was 214 announcement of some plans. And if I'm not mistaken, right now there's some type of an announcement just using the vague term of you're going to build something on the U.S. Gulf Coast. My job is to try to get you to tell us where that is, right? Tell us a little bit about that project and your others.
Okay. Let me first start out talking about some of the projects that are already on the ground. Over the last couple of years, we've really focused on debottlenecking our existing assets. So we've debottlenecked the LaPorte Olefins unit here. That started up in 2014. We debottlenecked the Channelview Olefins facility. We're right in the middle of a debottleneck at Corpus Christi Olefins, which should start up later this year. When you add all of that up, that's pretty much equivalent to a brand new world-scale cracker. And so we've been able to do it quicker and get our products to market sooner and really at a lower per pound cost of construction from a debottleneck perspective. So again, as mentioned earlier, we're shifting our focus now to larger, more brownfield, full-scale units. We announced earlier a propylene oxide facility that we're looking at potentially building at our Channelview facility. That's under engineering. That is not fully funded at this point, but we are aggressively studying that project. And then the most recent announcement was a world-scale polyethylene unit to be built on the Gulf Coast. And Unfortunately, I can't tell you exactly where that's going to be built. Hopefully, that decision will come out in the next 2 to 3 weeks, though. So we should know very soon where that will be built. I will tell you that our LaPorte site is in the running as one of the facilities where that unit could be built, and I've got my fingers crossed.
Okay, so let me just drill down with one more question in that regard. What are the factors that would be important for the LaPorte facility getting it? What do we have to do? What do we have to have here to be better than maybe that neighboring state to the east?
Great question. You know, there's a number of factors that we look at in terms of where to site a facility. A lot of it is availability of raw materials. I think, you know, you can't get much better than the Houston area in terms of raw material availability and infrastructure. We look at our existing sites and what infrastructure exists in terms of utilities and other facilities where we won't have to build that in, say, a greenfield site. Distribution is a big one. You know, we do have the port here, so you have very close access to the world. But, you know, if you look across the Gulf Coast, there's a few other cities that have similar type infrastructure. So we kind of look at it in aggregate. We also have to look at what products we're going to make and where our customers are. Obviously, a lot of this will be shipped around the world, but a lot of it will stay here in the U.S., so we want to site it, obviously, closest to where our customer base is. And again, they put all of those factors into a matrix and see where it shakes out.
Good. So we'll all be looking for an announcement in a few weeks, right? So thank you. Appreciate that. Dave, let me go ahead and follow up with you on INEOS. You guys are not sitting on the sidelines watching, that's for sure. I guess in 2014 you broke ground on a large expansion in LaPorte, and in March Bloomberg News reported that you're considering, and I love the numbers, anywhere from a 250 million to a billion pound annual ethylene production unit. So tell us what you can.
Well, first of all, I'd like to start out with something even bigger and strategic, and I think really groundbreaking in the sense of changing the dynamics of the market globally. We have invested heavily, about $2 billion in terms of developing a pipeline infrastructure and a loading infrastructure, as well as 8 Dragon-class ships. And I had no idea what a Dragon-class ship was when I started. However, it's about 26,000 metric tons of supercooled ethane, which we can then export to our facilities in Europe, one in Norway, one in Grangemouth, Scotland, where we have crackers. These are huge ships. They're 2 football fields long. That would be American football fields, not soccer fields. But the equivalent of roughly 70,000 barrels a day of a virtual pipeline, which actually allows us to bring U.S. shale gas economics to our plants in Europe, which are suffering under lack of capacity for feedstock. And this really fills a niche for us, and it helps out with the situation over here because there needs to be a place for all that shale gas to go. We're more of an oil industry based, moving towards gas here in the U.S., but certainly it's going to have some great advantages for us overseas. So that is a really exciting news. And just this morning, Mayor Bechtel from Morgan's Point was telling me that one of those ships, the JS INEOS Insight, is actually anchored at Morgan's Point right now. So I'm headed over there for a photo op this afternoon to see it. A little closer to home, we're going to be nearing mechanical completion, be done by the end of this year on a billion pound per year bimodal unit, which is a very high-tech, high-density polyethylene, great properties for automotive gas tanks and for gas piping and things like that, but also even film, high molecular weight film. So really great opportunity for us there. Down at Chocolate Bayou, we're still studying as well the opportunity for olefins. Like Dale had mentioned, we've had a lot of creep and debottleneck, and in fact, we just completed a turnaround this summer, a couple of months ago, which was over $150 million. So a little bit of CapEx, a little bit of OpEx in order to increase reliability and maintenance and environmental performance. Having said that, we are expanding in 2 areas down at our Chocolate Bayou facility. One is in a cogen facility, which will improve our environmental performance, will improve our electrical reliability, and in fact now will become a net exporter of power to the grid. It's a 90 megawatt facility. And then even more exciting news is our NES oligomers business has announced that they're going to build an almost £1 billion per year linear alpha olefins complex down there, and that's probably about 800 construction jobs, ultimately about 100 permanent jobs. And what that will be used for actually is as a co-monomer for all the plastics, all the polyolefins facilities that are being built here on the Gulf Coast. They use that as a monomer to affect the properties of the plastic, and that's where most of that material is going to go. We also have a smaller debottleneck up here at our LaPorte facility. It's about 45 million pounds per year. It's going to result in, I believe, about a half a dozen extra jobs, maybe 70 construction jobs at its peak. But really a lot of exciting things going on globally for INEOS and also here locally where we continue to see the opportunities. Just one footnote I think is kind of interesting is that we do have a Hull in the UK in a location called Hull, where they have an ethyl acetate plant, and we're actually just announced a debottleneck in that of several $100 million. And the reason that's notable is it's the first announcement of significant capital investment since Brexit announcement. So,
very good. Robert, I want to give you a chance to jump in here. Want to talk to us about in detail of some of the projects? You mentioned a couple of them earlier, but do you want to expand on that?
Certainly. So as I mentioned, the Bayport plant is beginning full operation. We're actually going into two-line operation next week. That plant is making PVOH, which goes into a lot of applications like adhesives, emulsions, even PVC production. And we have some new unique products which are actually going into water-resistant adhesives. So that plant is going to two-line operation next week. We're producing material for qualification on a global basis, customers here in the States, in Latin America, India, and Asia. We expect to fill out that plant by next year. In addition, we touched on the expansion at the EVAL site. That will be part of a major turnaround that we'll do in early 2018. So that will be debottlenecking of our largest production line, and we'll be increasing capacity on that line from nominally 24,000 tons. We'll increase capacity by an extra 11,000 tons. Looking ahead, we know that the EVAL business is growing at a steady rate of 4 to 5% globally. That turns into a volume demand of anywhere from 5,000 to 6,000 metric tons. So that means someone who produces EVOH has to build a new plant every 2 to 3 years. So we're looking for ways to scale up our capacity and meet that demand. And we were actively considering where we would build again.
Right. Well, let me follow up on that. You mentioned building every 2 or 3 years. I think I almost heard a sigh in the audience about that. And hey, this is business opportunity for us. But how do we compete? I mean, you mentioned it's a global business. How do we compete here to be sure that we're getting that plant site, or we're getting the products shipped into the site?
Well, the U.S., and particularly Houston, has a lot of advantages. I mean, the first thing we look at is our customer base. Where is the business? A lot of that business is in the Americas. And then you look at where you can locate a plant close to raw materials, close to the infrastructure you need to move those raw materials and final products to customers. And then the network of people that support a plant, engineering, construction, maintenance, and underlying all that is the governmental system. The political stability and the legal system that we have here in the States is a tremendous advantage for all of us.
Very good. Dave, let me come back to you. I believe you used the word renaissance earlier, at least one of you did, and we are experiencing a renaissance in the chemical industry. Why, and how is that impacting your company?
Well, I think the impact upstream has had a negative effect, and that's clear. And we hear a lot of announcements of a lot of the oil majors and the layoffs on the west side of town. On this side of town, it's quite a different picture. What the shale gas opportunities have presented really in the context of a manufacturing renaissance has allowed the downstream industries to improve both their feedstock position as well as their energy positions. And that has really turned the industry on its head, and it's why you're seeing a lot of the expansion, some of which, you know, people have tapped on the brakes a little bit to be sure, but just enormous projects going in that we would not have even conceived of 3 years ago. And as I mentioned before, what it's also allowed our company to do is leverage those shale gas economics through a significant investment, but actually to try to leverage those overseas as well.
Very good. As you were saying, I was watching Robert and Dale both nod their heads, so I think everybody agrees we have a renaissance. So let me change the tone a little bit. Dale, what worries you? What could stop this bit of boom we're in?
Well, let me first comment on the Renaissance. Absolutely agree with Dave's comments, and I would add that you know, as we build out a lot of the initial building block chemicals, olefins, you got to find vertical integration opportunities. So you've heard us and others announce polyethylene expansions. I think there'll be more of those derivative expansions coming to try to vertically integrate and ultimately get products that are more fungible around the world. Because, and this takes me to my concern, is with all of this growth, we have a tendency in this industry to overbuild. And so we're all going after the same carrot. And so there will come a time, probably in the next few years, where we're long on capacity. And so it doesn't concern me greatly, but certainly our margins are going to come down over time as we try to find homes for this material, and it gets much more competitive, not only here in the U.S., but around the world. But if you look at the fundamentals across the globe, you have a lot of emerging countries, you know, third world countries that are really starting to develop, whether it's India, whether it's places in South America, that are going to continue to demand basic products. And a lot of our chemicals, really all three of us up here, our companies produce basic building block chemicals that support how we live our lives day to day. And so I think fundamental demand is going to continue, and as long as we have the shale gas advantage here in the U.S. and cheap feedstocks and cheap energy, I think we'll do quite well.
Okay. If we do get to that position where, I think you used the expression, you know, we're long in supply, how do the plants react to that?
Well, that's a good question. It's going to be on a case-by-case basis. I think it's very reasonable to expect some of the older, less profitable units will be shut down. I mean, I think that's just the nature of where we're headed. Others will retool and maybe focus on more specialty products. I mean, let's face it, a lot of the units that are being built are extremely large, world-scale units. They don't transition real easy, particularly when you're talking about polymers or downstream type chemicals. So they're going to make a few products and a lot of them. So the older plants that maybe can't compete on volume can retool or redevelop their product slate to compete in maybe more niche markets where these large plants, where it just doesn't make sense to produce it.
Thank you. Dave, I want to turn to you again. Robert, I'm not forgetting you down there. When I asked that question, you know, what would handicap this area, what would stop us, workforce development comes to my mind. I know that's a passion of yours, so can I turn to you for an answer? And keep in mind, we have probably 10, 15, 20 students out there who are here today because they want to hear about how our industry is going and how they can get a job. So with that in mind.
So I think that we have what I would say a perfect storm right now. We have this manufacturing renaissance that's allowed us to expand our facilities. With that, we also have a significant challenge in terms of retirements. And there's been a number of studies done. The most relevant of those is probably ECMA here in our own backyard here, which showed a 50% turnover of people that actually operate the plants by 2019. And that includes crafts and operators and engineers as well. On top of that, we have competition because of the uplift from shale gas and the work that we're doing in the residential, the commercial, other activities as well, which are also competing for the same resources, especially with the skilled trades. On the downside of that, there was another study done. It was 2012 for Houston ISD, and it showed that of the grade 8s that were entering the school system, the secondary school system, that only 20% of those leaving grade 8 and entering the system were going to have post-secondary credentials, whether that be a certificate, a 2-year associate's, or a 4-year university degree. And on top of that, it's even worse for the economically disadvantaged people. It's probably half that rate. So here we have this need, which is growing at a huge pace, and we've got this supply, which is not helping matters. On the plus side, you know, the recently introduced HB 5 from the Texas legislature, which promoted kids making career decisions in grade 8. They called them endorsements, so that they'll either be career ready or they'll be college ready by the end of high school. That's an important opportunity for us as industry with the educational institutions to really build momentum around getting folks into great careers in our industry. On top of that, industry is very motivated to be working with the colleges, and we're doing a lot of work in that area with, in this area, Lee College and San Jacinto College and College of the Mainland and Alvin College to really improve on those programs. Most recently, Lone Star is going to be breaking ground on a P-Tech facility. There's an effort underway at San Jacinto College for a $70+ million Petrochemical and Energy Technology Excellence Center, which is really exciting, a lot of industry involvement in that. So there really is a lot of opportunity, but it is nonetheless a challenge. And what's nice to see is industry working together to sort of lift everybody's boat and try to build a population that we can all draw from in order to support our industry. And then I think beyond that, the challenge is upon us internally to be able to impart, to be able to do that knowledge transfer so that the folks coming in, the folks leaving, get the most out of the folks leaving before they hit the plant gate for the final time. So a lot of opportunity, but a lot of challenges as well.
Thanks. And you guys are answering the audience questions with your comments, so I appreciate that. I do have one follow-up to that, and I'll really lay this out for all three of you if you want to take a shot at it. One of the questions from the audience is, are your companies considering waiving a policy that most companies have in place where you do not hire an employee who comes to you with a felony conviction?
That's a tough question. I think the obvious answer is on a case-by-case basis. We have a highly critical, highly safety-sensitive industry, and we need to make sure that we get the right candidates. Can you say a 100% blanket statement that we won't allow that to happen, we won't allow felonies? I don't think I can say that. What I can say is we place a lot of scrutiny, and we spend a lot of time on our recruitment process to make sure we get the right candidates.
Yeah, great.
Well, I really second those comments about the investment in workforce development, and all of us are looking for ways we can invest in the education of the next generation, both of skilled professionals and skilled tradespeople that we need working in our plants, and also obviously transferring knowledge from the folks that have been in the industry for a long time and are about to leave, making sure that that knowledge and the skill and experience they have is transferred to the next group that is coming in to take on those roles. I also want to second the point about security and the sort of scrutiny and level of trust that we require for folks that work with us. We work in a dangerous industry. It's regulated. It's regulated because we handle and control hazardous chemicals and incredible amounts of energy. And if we can't trust each other, we don't have a basis to operate the plant. So, you know, again, there's no sort of blanket policy, but obviously we have to trust a person before they can walk in the gate and work with us.
Right.
I wanted to come back to your question actually about challenges for the future and mention water. We use a significant amount of water in our processes, and we think that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it'll either be very expensive to use that amount of water, or there'll be restrictions on water usage. You know, we all know the history. We don't pump water out of the ground anymore. We use surface water so Houston doesn't sink into the ocean. But as the population grows, as industry invests, the demands on our water resources are going to increase. So investing in internal recycling and working with our partners that do wastewater treatment, we think that's a really significant strategic challenge for us, and that is something that we're going to be working on over the next 5 to 10 years.
Well, another audience question, if I may. We talked about a lot of products, and I had you explain to us some of the building block chemicals you send out for consumer end products, but question is, where do your products get transported to or exported to? Is it U.S.? Is it overseas?
I guess it depends on which part of the chain you're talking about. Most of our basic building block chemicals are olefins, so ethylene and propylene. That pretty much all gets consumed here in the U.S. in various downstream units. When you start talking polymers, today we export maybe 20 to 25% at the most of our material to other places around the world. So most of it is consumed here in the United States. But I think we're going to see that shift as more and more capacity gets built here. There's just not going to be enough demand in the U.S. to absorb all of that capacity. So our plans, and I suspect other company plans, are to export a large amount of that material that gets produced, particularly in the plastics area, to other places around the world. So the port's going to get the transportation systems and the port are going to get very busy over the next few years.
And I think there was a follow-up question to that one. How do you, some of your products are obviously liquid products, so you ship them a certain way, but are you shipping in bulk? Are you shipping individual packaging? How do you do it?
For us, we're pretty far upstream, so most of ours go out in bulk. The larger, the better from an economic standpoint, so we ship a lot of material in pipeline if we can, if we have the infrastructure, and we do have a fairly large pipeline network of about 1,400 miles of pipeline throughout the Gulf Coast. We ship a lot of material in barge, so if you're a fisherman or a boater and you're on the intercoastal waterways these days, there's a lot of barge traffic, and a good portion of that is ours. And then we ship a tremendous amount by rail also. We ship very little by truck because it is the most expensive mode of transportation.
Okay. Great. Any add-ons to that one? If not, we can go to the final question. All right. Nobody has sent this one up on a card yet, and I'm not surprised because they're being very polite, but just about everybody in the audience wants to know, how can they engage with your company? How can they do business with your company? Can I have each of you answer that in the final couple of minutes we have left?
Sure. We want to be very open about the way we do business. So all the jobs that we have internally and externally within the company are posted on our website. We're trying to become more visible in the community, so you see us at more community events. And we're engaged in a number of the different organizations, like the Economic Alliance, like East Harris County Manufacturers Association, like BAHIP. And so it's through, I think, those industry associations. I think that's probably one of the best ways to get to know us and to do business with us.
Chad, that sounds like a shout out for the procurement breakfast. So everybody watch for those coming up. Dave or Dale, anything to add to that?
I would echo Robert's comment. Certainly a lot of the networking, the contacts, initial contacts are made through the industry forums. And likewise, we're trying to go even further upstream in terms of the employee population or potential employee population. But I think paramount for our business in a lot of the work that we do is there's certain things that you have to do to meet the ante, and one of those is an exemplary safety record. We like to bring people in that have great safety records, and we like to learn from them and find out how they achieve them. And beyond that, I think we have a pretty sophisticated, I would say, procurement process that looks at a lot of factors, and just need to get in touch with the right folks within an organization, those proper touch points, to be able to make the right value proposition.
Well, a lot of similar themes. I mean, it depends on what it is. If you're looking for a job, go to our website. All of our jobs are posted on there, at least those that are where we're looking at external candidates, and very easy to apply online. If you're looking for raw materials or to engage at that level, there are contact informations, and it's by product, so again, easy to find on the website. And from a procurement standpoint, there's contact information as well. I would say, you know, those contacts at a personnel level are important, so that networking is also critical. But as Dave said, you know, the ticket to entry is a good safety record. And so if your company struggles from a safety perspective, chances are we probably won't do business with you. So that's first and foremost. So you got to get that part right, and then, you know, be innovative and be efficient in terms of how you do things. And I'd say you got a good chance of working with us.
Thank you. Dale, Dave, Robert, I appreciate you all taking the time. And again, the questions were coming up, and you were answering those as they were. So, audience, thank you for the participation. But what a great group of leaders we have leading our petrochemical industry. Thank you, gentlemen.